Hello, Pravin.
Hello, hello.
Hello, viewers. Welcome to the Unacademy Chess India channel. I am International Master Sharad Tilak and I am here with 7 times national champion and Arjun awardee Grandmaster Pravin Thipsay. And today
Hello.
we are going to have a discussion on Bobby Fischer. So, Pravin, it is a topic which is dear to every chess player's heart, I think.
Yes, indeed. I think Fischer has been the best ambassador for the game of chess, undoubtedly.
Yes, I remember during the Fischer Spassky World Championship match, I was very, very young at that time and I wasn't even playing chess. I, in fact, didn't even know the moves. But my father was quite fond of chess, and every morning he would open the paper and play through the games, and it had created quite a buzz everywhere.
Yes, I think the entire world basically took cognizance of game of chess. Earlier, the game of chess after the Second World War, I think it was restricted only to Soviet Union and the East European countries. The others did play, but they weren't good at that. And as a result, the Western press or the Indian press wasn't really interested. But I had started playing the tournament chess when the match started, and it was a really great occasion to watch the games with the commentary. And almost all the top Indian players, like Vinay Kumar Paranjpe and Ramchandra Sapre, Sri Krishna Sakharkar, Ramji Menon, they wrote on different newspapers, and if you could really understand the moves, the purpose of the moves made, and that was a sort of first training session I would say I had watching these columns. I think wonderful, and I think it was in the Western press also. You must be remembering that it Fisher's name was there every day or every alternate day for about 2 to 3 months.
Yes, indeed. First time I think chess had come in the real sense to a public platform after the Second World War. Because I think after the Second World War, the popularity in Western Europe saw quite a decline. Because before the war, Germany and France and even England, they were very prominent in the chess field. But I think after the war, that situation changed and only Soviet Union was dominating.
True, true.
And it was only in the 60s that for the first time a challenger from the Western world started seriously threatening the domination of the Soviet players. So I think it bears study. In fact, the first book I ever bought, Praveen, was My 60 Memorable Games by Fischer. Today,
Okay, great.
today, even half a century later, I think it is considered a classic. But that is the first chess book I bought, and I learnt a lot seeing those games. And I started playing all the openings which Fischer played.
I remember Grandmaster Shasikiran. I think I think year 2003 or 2002, he said that his most favorite chess book was My 60 Memorable
Yes,
Games.
yes, mine too for
Yes.
several years. In fact, it was the only chess book I had, so there was not much choice. But even after I started going through many other books, my liking for My 60 Memorable Games remained intact. To this day, it does.
In fact, the chase wave continued because the columns which had started with Bobby Fischer match, Fischer Spassky match, the legendary match which is remembered by everybody, the columns, even after the match, the chess columns continued in various newspapers. I remember Indian Express, Times of India, The Hindu, and Marathi newspaper Maharashtra Times. They continued the columns for some time, even after the match was over, several years actually.
Okay.
So it sort of changed the status of chess. And how about the prize money? I think the prize money was increased quite a lot, isn't it?
Yes, I think there was a very huge jump. Spassky defeated Petrosyan in 1969 World
Yeah.
Championship match, and I think he got $1,400 for winning the World Championship. And yes, that's a ridiculous sum, though it was not such a ridiculous sum in those days, perhaps. But today, indeed, it sounds ridiculous. But just 3 years later, Fischer got more than $78,000 for winning the match against Spassky. So that's a huge jump. I mean, more than 50 times.
Yes, and also the match had a lot of aspects which we'll discuss during this. But I think we have got some very interesting games and positions
Yes,
for the
yes, and we
viewers.
must go through
So
them.
let's
But
come to the chess content as well. But I think the Fisher's life is more interesting than his chess content. But yes, we'll come
yeah,
to
we
the
will look at the games
yes,
also.
yes.
And Let me just check with the viewers. Hello, guys. Are we audible to you? Can you hear us clearly? Everything fine with the stream? If there are any problems, please let us know. So, Pravin, let us move ahead to the game. Shall we take a look at Fischer's game against the Austrian Grandmaster Karl Robasch? I think that was a very famous game.
Yes, yes. In fact, it was, I think, considered to be the most popular game in the 1962 Olympiad, isn't it? It became very popular.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
it was played in the Varna Olympiad. And Fischer, of course, started with his standard move, e4.
He always played e4, except the World Championship when he shifted to c4. But otherwise, yes, always played
Yes, it was at, he even said that it is best by test.
e4.
Yes, so he said it is clearly the best first move. Though in the World Championship match, he did not stick to that, as you correctly pointed out, and Robasch played d5. This is the Scandinavian or center counter defense. Basically, it is quite in keeping with the classical principles of Stinitz and Tarrasch, that when white occupies the center with his pawn, you must either match him or counter him. So e5 and d5, I think, were the most popular plans for the opening. So Fischer captured, of course, natural response, queen into d5, nc3, and now Robasch went queen d8. What do you think of this move, Pravin?
Yes, I think queen d8. It wasn't considered to be a great move anytime, but yes, I think Carlsen played it about 7-8 years back, 10 years back, and then he had a very successful result with that. But even today, I don't think it's the best move. Now, queen d6 is more popular than queen a5, but queen a5 had been the main move, even played by Adolf Andersen in the famous game against Paul Morphy. So that was a common move, queen a5, and queen d8 was sort of a surprise move, I must say.
Yes, it does look a little passive because the queen returns to its original square, and I mean, it's as though black hasn't moved at all, isn't it?
Yes, yes, black has actually lost one tempo. White is going to get one more move.
Yes,
So black is going to be two moves short.
Yeah.
But yes, it has its own advantages, that it could create a counterplay against the d4 pawn, and that was the purpose of this. So Carlsen played with the same idea, but of course with a different way of piece position.
I think the main thing to be said in favor of black's position is that he has completely avoided creating any weakness.
Yes, true.
So not so easy for white to crack, and Fischer continued d4, and now Robasch played a move which I think is not very common and popular, that is g6.
Yes, I think black is trying. Black is being very ambitious, isn't it? Trying to attack d4 immediately.
Yes. As you said just now, that the idea behind taking the queen to d8 is that it can keep attack on d4. So I think black is taking it a bit to the extreme, trying to launch an attack immediately. And now his idea is probably to play bg7 and then knight to h6 and f5.
Yes.
So this seems to be the plan. Bishop goes to g7 and knight goes to h6 and f5, and black tries to put pressure on the pawn on d4.
And also black can pin the f3 knight. If white plays knight, should white play knight f3, black could pin the knight with bishop g4 and play knight c6.
Yes. So
attempt of dominating the d4 point is the idea.
Yes, and the knight on c3 prevents white from supporting it with the move c3.
Exactly. Otherwise, the whole exercise by black would be pointless because of c to c3.
Yeah.
But now since the knight is there, very well.
So now Fischer, I think, came up with a very interesting idea. In fact, he simply decided not to bother saving the d4 pawn.
Yes, in fact, in his book, he gives an exclamation mark to the move he played.
Yes, bishop to f4.
Bishop to f4, yes.
And the idea of this move is to discourage knight to h6.
I think various ideas. First is to quickly castle on the queen side so that the d4 pawn is well guarded. Secondly, moving the queen to d2, as you said, prevents knight h6 in general, but also he avoids a pin which would take place after knight f3, bishop g4. So even avoiding that, bishop f4, and Fischer says that this is immediately the reaction. According to Fischer, this position is already better for white in the book, he says. But yes, I mean, it's certainly a little better for white, sure.
Yes, but I do believe that sometimes Fischer was a little extreme in his views, wasn't it?
Yeah, he exaggerated because he wanted to teach the world and prove his point. And if he didn't use word like winning position or something, then people would probably would not refrain from making such moves. I think he was a great teacher. So he
Yes,
explained
yes.
it in such a manner that it prevented people from playing such dubious openings.
Indeed, indeed. And that is how his books taught a lot of things to many, many readers. So bishop f4, bishop g7, the natural move. Now preparing knight h6, f5 and attacking the d4 pawn. And probably Robash was expecting something like knight f3, bg4. But Fischer coolly ignored the attack on the d4 pawn and played queen to d2.
Yes, that's the purpose of the play. And
Must have come as a big surprise for Robash, isn't it?
yes, I think must be because probably I don't think any games were there. But what I want to point out is Fischer's ability to think of something unusual. For example, I'm sure that he hadn't come across the move Queen D8. I have not seen any of his games in E4 D5, and G6. This is the only game I have seen actually. So to think about the Black's idea immediately and to come out, I'm sure he had a great judgment and very quick in his judgment. I'm sure that he was able to see through Black's plan and also to find a hole in the plan. I think that's something even today champions are not always able to do that.
Yes, his alertness was indeed legendary. And now, what happens if he takes the pawn? It creates some problems for black. So, shall we
Yes, I
just.
think yeah. Can I think let's see if there are any views. The d4 pawn,
Yes,
can it be taken?
yes, viewers, do you think the pawn can be taken? Because there are two ways to capture it. Black can play bishop into d4, but if he thinks it's too risky to keep queens on the board, he can even play queen into d4, trying for an exchange of queens. White can hardly avoid the exchange of queens probably, or maybe he could go bd3, I guess. But yes, viewers, do you think the pawn can be taken? Shall we quickly go through some variations, Pravin?
Yes, I think yes. Let's play out the variations.
Yeah, so first let's look at queen into d4.
The most obvious move, trying to exchange queens,
And now white simply plays queen into d4, bishop into d4, knight b5, attacking not only the d4 bishop but also threatening a deadly fork on c7.
yes, it's not only the c7 pawn that is attacked, but knight into c7 check wins the rook,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
very important.
So black must save the bishop and he must save his rook. So he is practically forced to play bb6.
Yes.
And now white simply recovers his pawn. And this position, Praveen, Fischer says is clearly a big advantage for white.
Yes, I think so. You must have seen several games by Fischer where how he showed the difference between the strength of a bishop and a knight in an endgame. I think just some of the legendary masters, William Slinitz, has also shown how bishop can be strong in endgame. And Fischer has, I think, the next largest number where bishop has dominated knight. I think Fischer has the maximum number of examples where he was able to win only on the strength of bishop against a knight. Otherwise,
Yes, and in this position, the missing bishop on g7 does rather jar the senses, isn't it? The fianchetto and the
yes,
bishop
white
is
is
gone.
ready to castle quickly, and black is yet to start the development. Developed pieces have gone. One bishop has moved thrice, 4 times actually, and has been killed. So if you move a piece a lot of times and then it is exchanged, then obviously you are lagging behind in development for sure.
Okay. And now let's look at bishop into d4, for which I think this move is very strong. What do you say, Praveen?
Yes, I think bishop into d4 probably is worse, I think, than queen into d4. Bishop into
Yes,
d4
long
looks
castles
not.
and he enters into a
Yes.
nasty pin.
Yes, and I don't see any way to prevent loss of material actually.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Because,
Because
yeah,
if
let's, for example, e5, bishop into e5.
or knight c6, then bb5 pinning the knight.
Knight c6, bb5, knight c6, probably knight b5, almost everything. Knight c6,
Yes,
bb5,
yes,
and e5, bishop into e5. I think that could be a pretty variation.
yes,
Knight
yes,
c6, bishop b5, e5, bishop into e5, bishop
yes,
into
and
e5,
both
queen
these
into d8, queen into d8, mate.
and both these minor pieces. Sorry, mm, both these minor pieces are pinned.
Yes, and e5, yes, that's a nice mate, I think. e5, bishop into e5, queen into d8, mate.
So after queen d2, uh, Robash gave up all his ambitions against the d4 pawn and simply continued his development with knight f6.
Yes, let's go back to that position then.
Fischer castle long
Hmm.
and black played c6, creating some squares for his queen, I think.
Yes, I think now there is no point in attacking d4, which has been well guarded. And now that the white king has settled on the queen side, I think it's logical to bring the queen out to a5 and try to attack with b5 and b4. So I think c6 is a perfectly logical move. Idea queen a5, b5, b4, and attack the white king.
And
Let's
immediately,
see who gets faster. Yes.
and immediately exchanging of the fianchetto bishop.
Yes, that's a remarkable move, I think.
Yes,
Bishop.
but I think Robash was rather reckless castling here. Don't you think so, Praveen?
Yes, I think castling into it. That's what Fischer has said. Isn't
Yes,
it?
yes,
The attack has already begun on the king side, and white queen will get a sort of sortie at h6. Some entry point at h6 is there. And Fischer had a very poor opinion about a fianchetto, isn't it? He said, open up the king rook file, exchange the dark colored bishop, open up the king rook file, sack, and mate. That was his.
yes,
So,
true.
yes, yeah.
And he
No,
did it
Fischer
in
was
many games
definitely.
too. He was just not just talking; he did that in many games too.
Yes, the famous Larsen games and many of
Also
them.
with Gligoric, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, and so black now, not sensing what great danger is there, just played short castles.
I think it's probably Robash hadn't come across such strong players. I mean, he was from Western Europe and they didn't have many opportunities of playing such strong players. So maybe in the Olympiad was the only time when he really played the world class players. And he was probably not expecting such a powerful attack. He wouldn't have seen such a powerful attack. I remember exactly 30 years later in Manila Olympiad in 1992. He lost in exactly same number of moves, 20 moves against Vishwanathan Anand. And that was also a very brilliant game.
Yes.
So probably Rubash wasn't good at defense, or rather he wasn't used to facing attack with such accuracy and strength.
And, okay. And now Fischer immediately launches an attack h4. This is a good indication of his direct style, isn't it? He never hesitated starting the initiative.
Yes, I think Fischer's personality also. I mean, he never shied away from speaking what he wanted to, and he was very clear. And yes, in his ideas also, he always would form an opinion, and he was always willing to exchange ideas. Like whatever, if somebody suggested a move, he was always willing to accept that. And he didn't have any trainer. He's the only player who didn't have any trainer or any practice partner. Everything worked out by himself, and that wouldn't have been possible without such judgment. So I think he just knows that he's going to play h5. And let's look at it. If the possibility like black doesn't do anything, then white is going to play h5, knight into h5. There would be rook into h5, g into h5, and queen g5. And the g7 bishop would be lost. So black cannot launch upon a roller, say a5, then h5 would be coming. So Robash correctly takes steps against the pawn advance h4, h5.
Yeah, and he played queen f5, believing that he had now stopped h5.
Yes.
Because knight into h5, rook into h5, he can capture with the queen.
And actually get a winning position.
But as we often see when players have castled on opposite wings, time is much more important than material.
Yes, and also pawn I think is too small. Probably I've seen people giving away pieces to give.
Yes, a very small
In one of the
price.
games, Carlsen in Dragon Variation, Carlsen I think lost a piece and was in bad position, but the attack was so strong that eventually he got into a good position and he won
Okay.
the game.
So Fisher goes ahead. Pawn is not much.
Yes, I think one open file for a pawn is definitely more than worth opposite side castling
Yes,
positions.
particularly when it's the rook file against the
Yes,
fianchetted bishop. Yeah, queen has a chance to directly go to h6 after the bishops are exchanged.
yes.
So
But white
now,
isn't getting g4 here. So do you think knight into h5 is possible? Because normally it's followed with g4, but here the bishop is controlling. So what happens to knight into h5?
yes, it's a very interesting continuation and probably the natural move to play, isn't it?
Yes, knight into e5, knight into h5.
For knight into h5, Fisher has given some excellent
Bishop e,
analysis.
bishop e2. Yes, I think no.
Yes, bishop e2 attacking the knight,
Hmm.
and after knight f6, bishop into g7, king into g7, queen h6 check, king g8, and g4
Yes,
with the idea of g5.
and no defense probably.
And a very beautiful point brought out by Fisher. If black
Hmm.
plays rook d8, then g5, knight
Hmm.
h5, bishop into h5, pawn into h5, rook into h5. There is a mate threat on h7. And black
Black
can,
must defend with bishop f5.
yes,
Yes.
if
So
he
it
guards
seems
with
that all
bishop
is well. It
f5,
seems that all is well, isn't
yeah,
it?
the bishop is headed for g6 and it seems that black has guarded the position,
And
defended
the white queen would
successfully.
be trapped after that.
Yes, after bg6, but Fischer here shows what he had planned. The move g6, black cannot take with the bishop, and h7 pawn can no longer be saved. Queen into h7 is
Yes,
coming
why?
by force.
Well, for readers' benefit, for viewers' benefit, we'll see why bishop into g6 cannot be played.
Okay, there is this bishop is pinned uh, because the rook is on the fifth rank, and after bishop into g6, white can just capture the queen.
Yes, the black queen far away on the other side of the board would be captured. Yeah.
So very deep and nice analysis by Fischer. So after h5, Robash realized that his planned reply knight into h5 no longer works.
Yes.
And then even if he doesn't take the pawn, white will simply capture on g6 and g7 and give queen h6 check. So for example, something like rook d8,
Hmm.
then pawn into g6, he has to take with the f pawn. If he
Yes. If
takes
he
with
takes
the,
with the h pawn, it's a basic mate.
yeah, if
Bishop
he
into
takes with the
g7.
h pawn, there is an immediate mate. Queen h6 check, king g8, and now queen h8 is mate. So for hg6, he must play fg6, and now bishop into g7, king into g7, queen h6 check, king g8, knight f3, and white is simply planning to take the knight to g5 and capture the h7 pawn. There is hardly anything black can do to prevent that.
Yes, I think it's just crushing in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's just crushing, and it's worth noting the queenside black pieces which have still not moved from their original squares. And many a times when we come across short games, we see that this is a common problem. Not developing the minor pieces in time to defend the king.
Yes, and look at white's position. Not a single weakness.
Yes, not a single weakness. Knights are out, files are opened, bishop on
Bishop can come
f1.
out with a tempo anytime.
Yes,
Bishop
yes.
c4 check.
Bishop c4 is coming out with check, and black's rook a8, knight b8, bishop c8, doing absolutely nothing. So practically he is playing without those three pieces.
Yes, true.
So after a long thought for h5, Robas decided to take with the pawn. This does expose the king and it looks very bad, but it has one advantage, I think, Pravin. It keeps the h file closed.
Yes, I think because the rook on h1 is ready-made, a ready piece to attack. I think keeping the h file closed is a wise decision. I think it was a good move.
Yes, and Fischer has now to find a way to attack because the G file isn't getting opened easily and the H file is closed.
And the two pawns, and black will in due course black may get bishop f5 and bishop g6.
Yes, and if bishop f5,
Complete
bishop
focus,
g6
yes.
comes,
Immediately probably it's not there because of queen g5. But
yeah,
black
but
will
it's white's turn
eventually
to
plan,
play.
yes, eventually
So
plan
Fischer
queen
played
bishop
bd3,
f5.
and now the tempting bishop f5. Once again, the pin problem occurs. After queen g5, the bishop is pinned. bg6 leaves the a5 queen hanging.
So queen on a5 hasn't really served much
Yes,
purpose with
actually,
regard to, yes,
it has created problems rather than helped. I think.
yes, probably. But again, it's a matter of strength and assessment and power to play the game well. I mean, that's the difference between the world champion, future world champion, I would say, and others.
And now Black at last decides that he should complete his long delayed development. So NBD7.
Yes, the knight tries to strengthen the king side, coming to f6 to support the other knight if required, but you shut the bishop on c8. So perhaps that could have some repercussions.
And Fischer played knight GE2. I have often observed, Pravin, and it's something which everybody must keep in mind, that if you look at the games of strong players, they never start attack before bringing their pieces into play. I think it is a very important point which everybody must keep in mind, because many times halfway through the attack you need more forces to support you, and if you are not already developed, the forces don't reach in time. But
Yes, and I think what Karpo says is also important. If you don't know which piece to develop first, and it's a slow game, then if you know that a particular piece belongs to a particular square, better move it to that square and let the other pieces decide where to go thereafter. So that also is, I think, a practical decision. So here, yes, without development, certainly not. BD3 and knight e2. I think a sort of amateur player would directly try to open up with g4 and something, and nothing would happen. But yes, bishop d3, knight e2, all pieces are joining. The entire army must join the attack, otherwise the attack will fail.
yes, right, Praveen. I'm sure all viewers will bear that in mind. And
Yes,
Robash, and Robash thinking, or rather, he must have got some false sense of safety, because it seems that the king side is not getting opened quickly. He played rook to d8. His idea is to put knight on f8 and then to g6, hoping that the three minor pieces will help to protect the king from the attack.
yes. In fact, even if you play knight g3 and knight into h5, the black knight on g6 would be reasonably defending. The queens could get exchanged also, and yeah, it looks like knight g3, knight h5 is no longer effective because knight f8 will cover h7, and you are not getting queen g5 so easily. So
Right.
even winning the h5 pawn is not so easy. Seems that black is okay, isn't it?
Yes, it seems black has, at least black is not going down quickly. That is the
That
impression created. That is what Robash must probably be thinking at this point. But Fischer is not to be denied. Once he has set his mind on attack, now comes the stunning opening up of the game with g4.
Yes, what a move. I think the ace move of the game, I think. The fantastic move. Okay, you don't let me open the H file, I open the G file. And I
Yes,
checkmate
quite
to enemy.
amazing.
And if white pawn lands on H5, then the knight F8, knight G6 plan is no longer possible. So I think G4 is the great move.
So
I
let
think the
us
best
see.
move in the game.
Let us just check out what happens if the pawn is captured.
Yes, true.
If pawn into g4, then bishop into g7, king into g7, queen h6 check, king g8, and the d3 bishop which Fischer has developed before starting any action, it now comes to his aid. bh7 check, and black will soon get mated. And if knight into g4, yes, what happens? Any suggestions after knight into g4?
Yes, I think Aniruddha wants to know which game is this. This is Fischer versus Robash, the Austrian Grandmaster.
It is against the Austrian Grandmaster Karl Robash, whose main claim to fame, I think, Pravin, is that the modern defense is also called Robash defense in some books.
Yes, true, true. He had a liking for the fianchettos, and he developed systems against e4 with king side fianchetto. So Robash opening, Perk opening.
And for knight into g4, there is a very simple way to continue the attack. Rook d g1, and suddenly the king is in grave danger in the g file. White is threatening f3.
Yes, I think black
Yes,
loses a piece.
Satyam,
Black
yes,
cannot.
Shank,
Black
Satyam,
cannot.
you are right. And it is black is going to get mated soon. There are two threats actually, not just f3 but even rook into g4 followed by bg7 and queen h6 check.
Yes.
So the dual threat will just finish him off.
True, it's just
So for
simply.
g4 now, black is hardly left with much resource and went knight f8.
Yes, I think knight into g4 was not captured. True.
And now after pawn into h5, a file is opened. We can see the difference between white's king and black's king. Black
Yes, I
cannot,
think black hasn't made a single attacking move. I mean, he didn't have time to play move like b5 because queen g5 comes. And how does one attack the white king? The only ways to attack is b5 and b4. b5 is generally refuted with queen g5. So now that knight has come to f8, he could prepare to play b5 and b4, after which he could have some counterplay. But doesn't get a chance because pawn into h5 again prevents the knight from coming to g6.
G6,
So rook
yes.
g1, bishop into g7, various threats now.
So now rook g1 I think is a serious threat, and he prepared to guard the bishop in advance with knight e6.
Yes, overprotection in style of Grandmaster Nimzovich. Very important.
Yes, and Fischer, it is quite amazing to see how Fischer just keeps on making some very simple moves and still manages to get very strong positions.
Yes, in fact, I think sometimes even Kasparov, some of the moves, the games look so simple that people think that they will be able to play like this. But when they actually play,
Dakshil says there is no sound. Are you able to hear us, guys?
yeah, Dakshil is not able to hear others. Is the sound clear?
Are people able to hear us?
Satyam wants to recommend Rook d1, bishop into g7. Two recommendations have
No,
come.
that was earlier.
Yes, one move before. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Satyam Prakash says it's clear.
Okay. I think some people have some lag, so it's okay.
Yeah, sometimes there can be a problem. Yeah. Okay, good. Vishal Shanks, thank you. Rishikesh, thanks. And white just gets the rook to the g file, rook d g1. Now there is a simple threat. Just capture the bishop with your bishop and play queen h6. The attack down the g file is going to be relentless. So black must get out of the pin, I think, Praveen.
Yes, I think.
We are disconnected from OBS Studio.
Okay, I think let's join again.
No, I don't know what the problem is.
No problem, the network. If you can, let's see sound. Yeah, okay, now the picture has come. Maybe, and yeah, I think we can view now. Others can view, I'm sure. Yes, King H8 has appeared on the board, and yes. So how does White?
Are you able to see, guys? Are you able to see the stream?
I think let's wait for answer. What
Yes.
would you play with White here?
Yes, they are able to see. They
Yes,
say.
okay. Yes,
Okay.
Nisha, thank you. Shanks, thank you.
Thank you. So let us continue. And after King H8, bishop into G7. Knight into g7. Yes, yes, Ayush, you are absolutely right. Knight into g7, queen h6.
Yes, a complete domination.
And now mate is threatened. So it has to be defended.
Or the knight has to be moved. If knight goes to f8, g7, knight goes to e8, then there's mate on f8.
Yes, if g7 knight goes to e8, your queen f8 mate.
And if knight goes to e6,
And if knight goes to e6, then the knight gets deflected with knight f4.
yes, and after knight f4, and next move would be knight into e6.
And g7 is no longer safe.
Yes, even knight g6 check and such possibilities can come.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Because here after rook g8, white just plays rook takes rook and you can't capture with the knight because there is mate on h7.
Yes, this is rapid mate. Rook g8, we can finish the variation. Rook g8, rook into rook check.
King into rook and then
Rook
rook
g1
g1 check and king moves. You can
knight
just,
into e6.
yes, and there is mate on g7. So bishop into for queen h6 he played rook g8. And once again the simplicity of play, it is quite amazing. How the moves follow naturally. It is indeed quite amazing because Fischer uses the most simple moves to achieve dominating position. So the next step is to intensify the attack against g7 square. So how to
In fact, I think such simple games are more difficult. There's so much to learn, and perhaps the youngsters don't really learn much by that because they think the moves are very simple. There's nothing fantastic. Nothing fantastic has happened except a pawn sacrifice. But here the accuracy level is very great, and one slight mistake would lead to a proper defense to be sort of defensive setup to be created. So if white wastes some time, black will develop the pieces and black will exchange both the rooks. After that, it could be a defensible position.
Yes,
also, you see, if the rooks are exchanged, then h5 pawn could become weak and could be lost with the black queen a, queen into a5.
yes,
So black just needs bishop to move the bishop and knight, and then he would probably bishop f5, knight f5, and I think black is perfectly fine, yeah?
Absolutely. And
Yeah, so
Satyam, Prakash and Shiv Shankar have come up with the correct idea. Simply play
Yes.
rook g5 and
Excellent,
double in the
excellent Shiva, excellent Satyam. Rook into g7 and knight f4. Ayush, I think you are really a little hasty, I believe, because rook into g7, rook into g7, knight f4 doesn't really threaten anything. And your opponent would play bishop f5. So rook g5 is the correct move.
Yes, rook g5 and the queen has to move now. So Robash went queen d8 and now rook double. How one move logically follows another, it's really most impressive.
Yes, and had black the opportunity of supporting the g8 with the other rook, then he would have had a additional option of moving the g7 knight,
Yes, and
which
even,
is deprived of now because the rook is not able to support. And even if he had moved the queen to c7, he still wouldn't have been able to move knight e6 because of rook into g8 check and knight into g8, queen into h7 bait, isn't it?
so now there is not much which actually black can do to save this game, is there, Pravin?
No, I think it's just
It's
about
almost as good as over. Because
Yes,
this knight cannot go to e8, there is queen h7 mate.
yeah, the knight on g7 must be moved, or the queen should be brought to f8. Only one of the.
Yes, queen f8 is a very interesting option. And once again, very precise play is required to refute this.
Yes, queen f8, I think, is the only move black can play here, basically.
So Robash didn't actually play it in the game.
Yeah, he resigned, no?
No, he played on for
Fine.
one move. But here, again, you have the excellent d5.
Yes, that's the fantastic move. Threatening d6. Let's make it clear.
Yes, and knight into d5 cannot be played because of mate on h7. Pawn into d5 fails to knight into d5. And when black develops the bishop, then d6.
and either the f6 knight or g7 knight is lost. D6, and I just go d. See the way white pawn penetrates, bishop d7, d6.
And now, after knight f5, it's a little complicated, but we'll take a quick look, Pravin, if you don't mind.
Yes, true. Yeah.
Knight f5, queen takes f8 check, queen takes f8, sorry, rook takes f8, bishop takes f5, rook takes g5, rook takes g5, h6.
No, first, yeah, bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5. Direct bishop takes f5 is not an option because the g1 rook is guarded.
Yes, yes. And now white has a very nice win with pawn into e7. Rook moves away, let's say, to b8, and now simply rook to g3. And it turns out that bf5 is useless because of rook f3. And white wins back the piece. It's a long, complicated variations. Would you like to see it again, guys? We could take another look if the viewers, if it's not clear to the viewers.
You are as given in the My 60 Memorable Games, I believe. No?
Yes. I think this is Fischer's analysis. After
yes, he has analyzed the game in depth. I think almost like today's computer accuracy, I must say.
Yes, and that was one of the hallmarks of Fischer's play, that he was extremely precise and his timing was always perfect. In fact, here Robash played knight f5, but after bishop into f5 he resigned.
Instead of queen f8, yeah?
Yes, instead of queen f8, because now after bishop into f5, he just take rook take g8, and he must either lose the queen or get mated on g7.
Yeah, so for bishop into f5 resigns.
For bishop into f5, Robash resigned. So it's I think a very impressive game. The way Fischer attacked, he was relentless, didn't give opponent a single chance, not one move was loose where opponent could hope to make a recovery. So
yes, and like chances and mistakes are all there in the position. White could have gone wrong at many occasions, and it would have been a sort of defensible position with bishop f5, bishop g6 coming, or knight g6 coming at times, but not a single opportunity to play that. I think that was a key point of Fischer's play. When Mikhail Botovnik was asked what was the strength of Fischer's play in 1972 after the World Championship, he said that it is the time element he has brought into the game. So they asked him, what is the time element? So he said, we are all strategically very good, but Fischer is able to break our strategic fortresses by the way of his initiative. And that is where we know that he is not in a good position if we get 2 or 3 free moves. But we wouldn't be able to get those moves. He doesn't give us time to make those all moves that would crush him. And that was there. The initiative, the sense of play. I think the sense of initiative was so great. I would say that today's Carlsen or Nakamura or Paul Morphy, these players, I think they had that sort of sense of initiative, and they had different. But yes, compared to the Soviet style, yes, but Soviet strategy was also important. I think Fischer learnt Russian in order to do that. But yes, the World Championship match was a great match. Unfortunately, we will not be able to show the Fischer-Spassky games because they are too strong. I mean, it's for a common player, they are very boring. They are not very exciting. I think we should go for the most famous combination of Fischer, that is against the Benko.
Yes,
the one
I think that would be a good idea.
I think.
And as you mentioned about the complexity of the games in the match, in his book Art of Analysis, Super Grandmaster Timman has written that he was analyzing one of the positions for 3 weeks before coming to.
Yes, and the number of hours he has written, 68 hours, the first game itself.
It took him 3 weeks to analyze one position. It was that complicated.
And he found a lot of, he analyzed the position very well, but he said that it was very complex. And, that is the way a player builds himself or herself. Timman became a strong player because of his habit of analyzing. I think Gelfand also says that because of his habit or interest in analyzing positions, he became so strong. I think analysis of positions, which is very important, and that is probably neglected by juniors. I think for advice to juniors is don't leave a position where a champion says so and knight b5 and white wins. So you find out how and white wins, because at their level, Carlsen says yes and white wins, but we do not know and white what and white wins is. So analyze it till it's simplified to your level. That's very important, I think, and that's what almost everybody, uh, every successful player has been doing.
Yes, of course. Analysis is at the heart of everything. As Teichmann said, chess is 99% tactics.
Yes, Tata Core also, and many, yes. Yes, and this is the famous Benko game. I think the most famous combination of Fischer probably, and against a strong American grandmaster. Black has just played Queen D8 to E8, a very deceptive move. I think. What is the plan? Let us. Why
Yes,
has Black played
it's
Queen
a
D8 to E8?
it's a very cunning move actually, and Benko's idea is that
Benko
when
wants to move the F pawn. If Benko wants to move
yes,
the F pawn
yes,
and
yes.
extend
After
queens,
bishop into d4, e into d4, e5, he wants to play f5 when the
not
black.
saving the knight. Not saving the knight. Oh, the queen h5 is attacked. So that's the difference in queen d8 and queen e8, isn't it?
Yes, and there is no time
f7,
to
f5
capture
opens
the
opens
pawn
the queen.
in passant.
And can white exchange queens and then take the knight?
No, because if he takes queen, then the knight will capture.
Yes, so what a nice resource.
Yes, it is very tricky, but Fischer,
So Benko was a
in
great player
brilliant
himself.
style, exposed the flaw of Benko's idea. Yes, and after bishop into d4, e into d4, he found a very strong move which refutes Benko's idea completely.
Yes, what a great move. I think you'll find this example in every Russian book. I've seen at least 5 or 6 Russian books where they give this combination.
I think it is in most puzzle books on tactics.
Yes, also, yeah. But
It's like
I'm talking of Russian books in the 70s,
oh
before
yes,
even
yes,
before the World Championship match,
yes. And
before the
now
Fischer-Spassky World Championship match.
completely refuting the idea of advancing the f pawn, Fischer played rook f6.
Offering a rook
Rook free.
free just
But
to block the f pawn and avoid the queen exchange. So how many can think of giving up a rook for avoiding queen exchange? But is it so strong then?
yes, it turns out that bishop into rook accepting the sacrifice leads to immediate disaster. After e5, there is no way to prevent mate on h7.
Yes, bishop into rook e4, e5. The bishop d3 gets opened up and can no longer be blocked with f7, f5.
With rook f6, the f pawn has been fixed in its place. So after rook f6, I think this must have come as a hammer blow for Benko.
Indeed, indeed. Yes, but he found the best defense anyway. But
And
I
he
think white
played
is
king
keeping
g8,
everything good.
still hoping against hope that Fischer would walk into a trap later.
Yes, I think that's the only move he could do. But he played a good move, yeah, sure.
And now Fischer advanced the e pawn. The f pawn is fixed, it can't move, so white's queen cannot be exposed to attack by the black queen. It's time to advance the e pawn and threaten mate on h7. So there's only one thing he can do, and Benko did it. h6.
Yes, I think Benko must be expecting here rook into d6 and d into c3.
And also perhaps rook into h6.
Also, yes, rook into h6 is a possibility also.
But rook into h6 still runs into the same move, f5.
Yes. Not queen into e5 because of rook h8 check. I think that is a very interesting
Yes.
position. Yes, we must see that.
And
Rook
now
into
queen
h6
into
looks
e5.
attractive because black would be eager to exchange queens with queen e5.
But now rook h8 check, bishop into h8 and queen h7 mate.
Yes, nice mate.
But after
f5
rook
is
into h6, f5, it spoils white's ideas. The d3 bishop is blocked and the queens are exposed to each other. There is no time to capture pawn into f6 and mate. Because pawn into f6, then black will first exchange queens and then take the pawn. So after h6, this move seems to win a piece, but it's only temporary, I think, Pravin.
Yeah, the piece will be. Yeah, that's.
After
I think let's show how the piece is.
after queen into
Not
e5,
back there. Yes.
several white pieces are attacked, and after
Hmm.
queen into e5, bishop into e5, the d6 rook is attacked and also the c3 knight. So white must lose back a piece.
Yes, and black is probably black is at least equal. I think
At
black
least
is
equal, yes.
black
Certainly
is
without any problems.
pawn up and probably preferable.
Yes, yes. He can get the pawn with rook h6, but then pawn into c3, and it is
Yes, and
certainly
yes,
not black who is in trouble.
yes, white is struggling for equality. So that was what Binku wanted.
Yes, he must have been
Nice.
hoping for. But
But there
again,
comes I think the simple move. I
yes.
save my piece and give you a chance to save your piece. Come on, save your piece.
And now black d6 knight is attacked. He still can't take the f6 rook because bishop into f6 runs into queen h6, and the queen will deliver mate from h7.
I think just two moves. Knight f5, bishop f5.
Yes, and
And
so on.
what if black saves the knight now?
But and if black saves the knight, let us say knight, where would
Knight c8, so that we don't lose a piece.
yes, knight c8, saving the knight, but that knight was controlling a very important square.
Hmm.
The square
Yes.
f5, which is now accessible to the white queen. Yes, Satyam, queen f5, and there is no way to stop mate on h7.
Yes.
So a very elegant, very nice combination by Fischer. Great clarity of play as usual. Shall we take
Yes,
a
in fact,
look at?
the entire game has been given in one of the books by Istrin, Kurs de Buto, way to chess openings, and he has commented it all in Russian, so I couldn't understand. But yes, he has given a lot of exclamation marks and to Rook f6 particularly.
Yes, and
Yeah, but, yeah.
altogether an excellent game.
Yes, it's a great game.
So let us take a look at another position from Fischer's games.
Yes, I think one of the most famous combinations, one of them. Yeah, it's my 60 memorable games. I think he loves that probably against the one which Fischer is famous for that move. Bishop.
Which game shall we see, Pravin? Is
Hmm?
this fine?
I think one of the games where he sacrificed the rook on e6, no? So,
Yes, this is
and
that.
opponent didn't take. Opponent didn't take.
Yes, this is that against Shokran.
Yeah, Shokran, yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's the position. It seems that, okay, white had slight positional advantage, but surely rook into e6 seems to win immediately because rook into e6, pawn into e6, queen into e6 check is deadly, and queen into e5 check. But black, what is black planning? Let us ask the viewers. Rook into e6, pawn into e6, queen e6 check, and queen e5 seems to be a very simple win. Queen e5 and bishop d4, isn't it? Rook e6, f6,
Yes,
queen
let us
e6
just
check.
play through the. Shall I just play through the variation?
Yeah, I
Pravin?
think you play the variation, which a common player would think white is, but black had set a trap actually. Black has anticipated something. Let's see what happens to the obvious rook into e6 and obvious f into e6.
And it seems that there is a very easy win, and so Fischer's opponent allowed the sacrifice rook into e6. In fact, he was under the impression that he is setting a trap. And
Yes,
he
so
must,
let readers find out why. Well, what's the flaw in this variation? Can black improve somewhere in between?
so what was Shokran hoping for? He had in fact set a trap, and he was hoping Fischer will play rook into e6. Unfortunately, his trap contained a major flaw, and Fischer, alert as usual, quickly exploited it.
Yes, I think one of the important principles is Karpo also has said that many times we feel that our opponent has stopped it, but it's also worthwhile seeing what if I play it anyway. I think that's something which everybody does, but yes, I think try it anyway. So what is that black was trying then? What did black actually play?
Yes, any
Otherwise,
suggestions here? What any idea what black had in mind here?
Chakradev has joined, Omkar Chakradev.
Yes, black was hoping to pin the rook with queen c8, and that is what Shokran played.
Yes, the white queen is hanging, so simple rook move could lead to loss of queen.
And it seems that the rook must be lost now, because if the rook moves, the queen is lost.
Yes, so black seems to be well set to be exchanged up, isn't it?
But in fact, it was not Fischer but Shokran who had walked into a trap.
So, okay, viewers, can you suggest something for white now? The position is actually good for white and not for black.
Fischer played rook into e6, allowing his rook to get pinned.
Yes.
Yes, Omkar, absolutely right.
It was played.
And after
Yes.
queen c8, bishop d7.
Yes. Nisha, yes, Omkar,
Yes,
yes.
Nisha,
Bishop.
absolutely right. And if queen into d7, then rook into g6 check, and it is black who loses his queen, not white. The
Yes.
queen has been forced to move from a supported square to an unprotected square. This is known as decoy. This is what we call a decoy, the tactical type known as decoy.
So, of course, if black moves the queen, then white moves the rook, and white is just a piece.
So another excellent example of Fischer's alertness, I think. Many players seeing the pin would have let it alone, but Fischer was always extremely alert and quick to spot any tactical errors by his opponent.
Yes, and I think one must caution the viewers because Fischer or rather anybody, except perhaps some of the players, but generally no top players are ever trying to get the opponent into a trap. They normally improve in their own regular way, and the traps come in between. So Fischer wanted to play rook into knight. He was not hoping to game to be over this way, but he was expecting some problem with the sound.
Yes, there is some problem with the OBS, but I think it's connected again now. And before we end the stream, shall we take a quick look at a not very well known but very nice combination from one of Fischer's games?
Which one?
Against a player not so well known. Okay, here goes. Fischer playing white.
Yes.
Yes, very nice combination.
Yeah, then the player who throughout solicited.
It's from a simultaneous game. It is remarkable that in a simul also Fischer could calculate so much and so quickly.
And you know, those who read Fischer sometimes tend to get very dogmatic. People say, oh, the bishop, giving a bishop for a knight, and sort of comments when we come. But Fischer was the one who has very regularly given bishop for a knight also in many positions. And he has won a famous ending against Saidi in a knight versus bishop, where he had a knight and opponent had a bishop. So, you know, like bishop better than knight is understood in a different and wrong way by many youngsters. I think I must caution them that nothing is important except the initiative and the position of the king. The safety of the king is the most important factor, I think. So, any suggestions for white here?
Yes, it's knight white to play and win.
Knight d6 check looks logical, but then king attacks the knight and nothing much is going to happen.
And how does white wrap up the game? It seems that black king, though it is in the center, it's not very exposed to attack because black spawns.
It's ready to castle in one move. It's ready to castle in one move. You move the knight, I castle. You play knight d6 check, I play king e7, and probably your knight is in difficult position, trapped probably.
Yes, yes.
And of course, knight d2 or such passive move, then short castle, black is fine.
Yes, any suggestions from the viewers? Yes, Satyam, very good. And that's what Fischer played. Bishop to h6, attacking the g7 bishop. Black cannot take because if he takes this, then after queen into e5, both the rooks come under attack.
Yeah, then only move to castle.
And after castles, queen e6 check and rook d5, and everything is lost.
Yes, and also knight f6. So many, I think there's so many refutations.
Yeah, knight f6 also.
And yes, knight f6 check. is also extremely strong. King goes to h8. But yes, queen into e6 check as you suggested, and queen
Rook
into
and rook
rook
into
into
d5,
d5.
and it's just winning.
Simply crushing, yes.
So for bishop h6, he cannot take the bishop, and black was forced to guard his bishop. Who can guard the bishop? Only one piece can do it. Because any other piece supports the bishop, then he will just
Like castle, then bishop into g7, king into g7, queen
queen
e5
into
check.
e5. Yes. So queen c7 is forced.
The piece which supports the bishop must have the qualities of the bishop to support the e5 knight.
Absolutely. That's a
Yes,
very
Guru.
nice point, Pravin, really. Because it is replacing the bishop, then it must do what the bishop is doing. Yes, very
Yes.
important point by Pravin, which all the viewers should pay heed to. And now comes the second blow, leaving another piece hanging. And it turns out that queen into d6 cannot be played because bg7 attacks the h8 rook and the e5 knight.
Yes.
And
And
so
e5 knight followed by b8 rook.
and where does the king go now? The king can't come up to the second rank because it leaves the g7 bishop hanging.
And king f8 has a nice tactic.
Yes,
Queen
king
into
f8 has
e5.
a nice tactic. White simply plays queen into e5 and the g7 bishop is pinned.
He made it like a science. He never played intuitively. We remarked it was based on a scientific research. I wouldn't say intuition at all for Fischer. He was a very scientific player. And he always had an explanation ready, a scientific explanation. A player who is intuitive like Capablanca was not able to explain why he played some moves. Fischer was able to explain each and every of his move even at the age of 15. Fischer was a very logical and systematic player. Where the intuition probably wasn't the strongest of his points. I think his strength, his judgment was the strongest point.
Forces the win of a piece.
Yes, I think bishop into queen into e5 directly shanks. Okay, in case of king f8, shanks wants to play.
No, bishop
but
into
for king
g7.
d8, yeah, so king d8, bishop into g7. Yes,
And if queen into g7, then queen into e5. And so now whatever black does, he must lose a piece. In
Yes,
the game, actually he foolishly played queen into d6, and after bishop into e5, of course, he had to.
Yes, I think queen into d6, even worse, all pieces are lost.
Yes, it's quite hopeless.
Yes, h8, b8.
In fact, Fischer here simplified with queen into e5 instead of taking with the bishop, because anyway the rook cannot be saved.
I think in simultaneous exhibition, one wants to finish out the games quick. That's also one of the reasons.
Yeah, true. So, viewers, I hope you enjoyed the Fischer games we saw today. And he was indeed one of the greatest players of the last century, perhaps one of the greatest ever. And there is a lot to be learnt even today from his games. Though he practically retired from active play nearly half a century ago, there is much to be learnt from his games even today. And every student of the game must go through Fischer's games to learn the strategies used by Fischer.
And not Fischer's games, Fischer's comments. I think games and the moves are probably easy to understand, but his comments, which have hidden meaning and teach you so much. Like many of his comments are very important, and go through his comments and try to decode them, try to find out. Fischer and Karpov, their comments have taught me more than anybody else comments, because these people made simple comments in one or two sentences, and that taught me that needed to be decoded for about 1 hour or 2 hours. So just go through the comments, try to find out why a player plays so. For example, in one position they say this move is not good, in the next position they play that move. So it will be pointless to see a game without finding out why the move was unplayable before and why the move was playable now. So that's the secret. I think the moves which are not played make a lot of importance in the game and in the course of the game. And Fischer was good in all the departments of the game, opening, middle game, and end game, which is very important. All the champions have been good at all the parts of the game of chess. You cannot be a champion unless you are a complete player, like Bobby Fischer.
Right. So we have the best tips from our Grandmaster Pravin Thipsay, who has been 7 times national champion. And I hope all of you enjoyed this stream, and we'll be back with more stuff for you. So stay tuned to the channel, guys. Unacademy has a lot of great trainers teaching chess on their website, unacademy.com. Praveen is there, I am there, and
Sharad Tilak is an international master, and he has played 2 Olympiads for India, and he was instrumental in Indian victory over Italy in the 1986 Olympiad.
yes, in Dubai.
And nice game in Dubai, and of course, he played in Moscow '94 as well. And yes, he is a Shiva Chhatrapati Award winner, and of course, I think a member of Indian team several times, but twice in Olympics. So, and he is also a renowned coach these days from Thane and Mumbai. So nice conduction of the session, Sharad, and I'm sure the viewers would try to imitate Fischer's way of thinking and not his moves.
Yes, and so viewers, do visit the unacademy.com website, and Praveen are teaching on the site, on their platform, and we have many other top class trainers, many grandmasters, including 5 times world champion Vishwanathan Anand, many other strong grandmasters, and do pay their website a visit and check out the stuff on offer. And we'll be coming up with new streams on YouTube, so keep watching. And if you enjoy the content, do like the stream, guys. So good night to all of you, and hope to be back with you soon. So let's say bye to everyone, Praveen.
Yes, and be a subscriber to watch live classes. Over 200 hours of new content every month will be given to you. Apart from the YouTube, there are live classes as well.
Yes, I think so. Now it's time to
Yes,
call
bye
it
all
a
and
day.
all the
Bye
best.
everyone, and we are shutting this off. So all the best to everybody.
I think we are still online.
Yes.